3, 2, 1. What's up, everybody? Welcome to the show. It's your boy, the Lo-Fi Horror Guys. If you didn't know, I hope you guys had a nice weekend. I know I did. I was in Detroit and Grand Rapids, had a couple of shows with my band. I put some posts on my Instagram. Just everything went well. Very fun. Didn't post up any videos. Tried to get, some different photos of things in my collection for you guys to enjoy and check out. So today my video is going to be a inspiration of sorts from a horror junkie 103178 who is on Instagram. You can check his page out at horror junkie 103178. Very cool stuff. He had a post about his top 10 favorite movies that really molded him to be the horror ghoul that he is nowadays. And I thought it was a very cool idea. I thought it was a very cool take on, some of the lists that are going around. I don't really participate in all of them, but I thought that one was especially cool because it got me thinking about, some of the reasons why I am so into horror that I am nowadays. And I figured I would share with you guys little stories, my top 10 movies. We're just gonna break down that as far as my top 10 horror movies that have made the ghoul that I am today. So we're gonna start 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay, so we have 10. I'm just making sure that I didn't grab an extra couple or something like that, and I had the correct amount for the list. So top 10. My very first movie I'm gonna go with is 1975's Steven Spielberg's Jaws. Of course, classic, nothing fancy as far as the DVD. This was the universal, real basic. I know I had a cooler one back in the day, but Jaws has always been so close to me. When I was a younger kid, I was on vacation with my family, and I was playing catch out in the outfield of a baseball field. My brother hit a line drive. The ball hit me in my head, basically knocking me unconscious. So in the meantime, we got back to my grandma's house, and my mom was trying to keep me awake because at the time they were saying when you had a concussion, you are supposed to stay awake. So my mom's like, well, go over and look and see if there's a movie that you want to watch, and we'll put something on for you, and we'll stay awake and we'll watch a movie. So I go over and I look at all the collection of of VHSs that my grandma had, and one of them was Jaws. And it was kind of my opportunity because I knew I wasn't supposed to watch it, but I acted like I was like, oh, so drowsy, and I was just like, well, can I watch this? And it terrified me. It ruined water for me to this day. I can go in lakes. I've never been in the ocean, but I go in lakes, and the moment that my feet aren't touching any dirt or anything, any sort of grounding, nope, I'm back up. Jaws has ruined me for the rest of my life. Steven Spielberg has ruined me the rest of my life. So my first movie is going to be 1975's Jaws. My second movie is going to be 1981's Funhouse. Tobe Hooper did that. Oh, I was going to mention too, the IMDb scores on these two. Jaws IMDb score is 8.0 out of 10, so very nice. 1981's The Funhouse, Tobe Hooper. This is my Universal collection as well. Nothing amazing, just the DVD artwork there. It got a 5.9 out of 10 on IMDb. The Funhouse is very cool. I can credit this to being one of the first, along with Jaws, one of the first horror movies I can recollect. One of the first horror movies I've ever watched. I know it was one time that my brother was babysitting me. My oldest brother was babysitting me, and he had said he was going to Blockbuster and he was going to rent a movie. And hey, if you want to rent a scary movie that we won't tell mom that we're watching, what do you want to get? I said, I don't know, just, grab something. So he grabbed The Funhouse. And so many memorable scenes in that movie that have stuck with me over the years that I just absolutely love. The Funhouse is definitely a favorite of mine still to this day. Tobe Hooper as a director in general is still a favorite of mine to this day. I love The Funhouse. So that's going to be my second selection for my top 10, Tobe Hooper's The Funhouse. Number 3 is going to be 1981's Evil Dead. This is my Book of the Dead edition. I've already done a review on it online. If you want to check that out. some of the little inserts, so on and so forth, blah, blah, blah. The disc. And The Evil Dead was directed by Sam Raimi, 7.5 out of 10 on IMDb. This was a buddy of mine, Ryan, him and I, that was kind of a tradition of ours, is on weekends going to Blockbuster and picking out different VHSs or DVDs or so on and so forth. And Evil Dead was definitely one of the earlier movies that I remember him showing me, and absolutely loving the movie, absolutely thinking that, it was sick, it was silly, it was goofy, it was gory. There was moments that it was scary, the practical effects. Evil Dead, for 1981 had some super sick stuff in it. Obviously, the funny claymation and such, was like a cheesy moment in time for it. But the movie, all in all, I've always loved it. I've always held it near and dear to me. And The Evil Dead had to be on my top 10 list for movies that have created the horror ghoul that you see today. So that is number 3 out of my 10. Number 4 is going to be 1974's The Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Tobe Hooper directed this bad boy. It's got a 7.5 out of 10. This is my Pioneer edition of the movie. I actually have my ticket still from when I saw the original remake of Texas Chainsaw Massacre on October 17th, 2003, which is really weird. I wrote all that down, but little slipcover chapter. So my story behind this is it was always a movie, once again, my buddy Ryan, always a movie my buddy Ryan was telling me about. Was saying it's just, he had seen it when he was younger, absolutely disgusting, real grimy, real gross. Well, what I didn't know was when I was going to watch it, I was going to stay the night over there, and we were going to have like some friends over or whatever, and we were going to, kick it and watch some horror movies and have, just all sorts of silly, spooky fun. And he didn't tell me that this movie would literally make me sick. I ended up going home because I was so sick from it. It just hurt my stomach. It disgusted me. I hadn't seen a whole lot like that beforehand, before I'd seen this movie. And Tobe Hooper just grossed it up. It definitely turned a leaf for me as far as, horror movie wise, as far as things that I had seen on camera and seen in film. Very much an eye-opener. So I definitely had to include Tobe Hooper's The Texas Chainsaw Massacre on my list as number 4. And none of these are really in a particular order. I'm kind of trying to do from earliest that I remember for movies that kind of have molded my likings to nowadays. So it's not really necessarily like a top 10, like my all-time favorite is Jaws, but just more or less of a list in general, curated, if you will. So number 5 is going to be 1989's Pet Sematary. They are releasing this next month. I've talked about it tons. The remake to it, I'm hearing really great things, crazily enough. Mary Lambert, this got a 6.6. And if I didn't say, Texas Chainsaw Massacre got a 7.5 out of 10 on IMDb. This got a 6.6 on IMDb. Pet Sematary is just one of those movies where, you always kind of heard about when you were younger. Anybody that wasn't even necessarily a horror movie fan would always bring up that, as far as like, going over to a friend's house or something and being like, oh, have you seen Pet Sematary? Like, that was just very much that movie, and I have always loved it. I've always loved Stephen King, so this movie in particular, Pascal's character was terrifying, along with Zelda. Pretty much anybody that I've ever met that's watched the movie has always been like, oh my god, Zelda is just awful, just things that nightmares are made of. So I had to include Pet Sematary on my list. Absolutely. So my next selection, and this is a box set, so I'm just gonna have to see about breaking out the first original movie, but this is Troma's 1984 The Toxic Avenger. Now this is, like I said, my box set that I have. It's got Toxic Avenger 1, 2, it's all the DVDs, part 3, and then Citizen Toxie. It's got a first and second disc on here. Now, what I am going to feature on my list is The Toxic Avenger 1, which was directed by Michael Herz and Lloyd Kaufman. It got a 6.3 out of 10 on IMDb. What the Toxic Avenger did for me was it opened me up to not necessarily that it was, you know, overly low budget or anything, because I mean the effects were very effective. The, you know, the acting and such, you know, it was corny, it was cheesy, so on and so forth. But what the Toxic Avenger did for me was it opened my eyes up to not everything having to be a Hollywood feature, you know, not everything having to be this huge budget thing for it to be effective, for it to be scary, for it to be disgusting. You know, it brought a light to me as far as, you know, seeing low budget movies being equally, if not more effective than a lot of things that you were seeing coming out of Hollywood or seeing out of huge motion pictures. The Toxic Avenger is absolutely disgusting. The points where he goes and falls into the toxic waste and then starts morphing and his skin is bubbling, and there's terrifying moments in that movie that are very overly very, very gross. And then there's funny moments where, you know, like the one guy's all obsessed over working out all the time, and dude's like, you know, says something about seeing fat, and he's like, fat, and he like goes down and starts like pumping the iron and everything. You know, it's just Trauma has always done a good job as far as, you know, keeping in that silliness, keeping in that lightheartedness, but then having moments of just sheer terror. I have always liked Trauma. I have liked many other movies other than the Toxic Avenger, but the Toxic Avenger had to be on my list for sure. So next up, we're going to go with 1986's Maximum Overdrive. I have loved this movie since the day I watched it. Absolutely cheesy. Emilio Estevez is amazing in it. It's directed by Stephen King. You know I say this a lot, but what more can I say other than AC/DC does the soundtrack? Automobiles, anything electronic is coming to life and trying to do whatever it can to kill people. A pop machine slams this dude right in his forehead and his nuts. There's definitely a ton of moments that are silly. There's a ton of moments that are equally creepy to where, you know, you think about if something like that ever happened. Far-fetched, sure, but Maximum Overdrive has always been a cheesy scare fest that I would recommend to anybody. 1986 on this bad boy, Stephen King directed, and a 5.4 out of 10 on IMDb. My next feature is going to be my VHS copy of Halloween. My VHS copy. Very nice. I figured, you know, I could slip this out. This is my Blockbuster Presents, which I just, I don't know if they were like selling this, trying to get rid of stuff because they were having DVDs come out. I don't really even remember where I ended up picking up this bad boy, but I love that I have it. It's a nice little collector edition. Maybe not a collector edition, but it's a nice little, you know, added bonus that it's got the Blockbuster Presents on the side, and all the things that Stranger Things are putting on their packaging nowadays are all right there in a nice little VHS bundle. Halloween brings me back to the days of being a little kid. I think I've told the story before as far as, you know, my being in my parents' room and looking at this TV that was literally barely bigger than my head was. And watching Halloween 2, watching Child's Play, watching, you know, all of these different movies around Halloween time that were on AMC, I think, or USA, or so on and so forth. There was a couple of channels that would air these movies, and, you know, it wouldn't be anything brutal because it was on, you know, regular television, but it was very, very cool, and it was always a time that I looked forward to as far as watching movies that maybe I hadn't seen. I remember, I think I saw Pumpkinhead for one of the first times, you know, along with different other features on these, you know, on these streams of movies. But Halloween and Halloween 2 in particular were always ones that I held near and dear to that time and have always loved ever since and could not ever stop loving. So, 1978's Halloween, John Carpenter obviously directed it. It got a 7.8 out of 10 on IMDb and is a absolutely gorgeous movie. It's kind of funny now that I'm seeing this. I'm looking at this, the back here. If you can see, got the old tattoo. I did not even realize that. But now that I do see that, let me tell you, I actually got this tattoo because of the back of the VHS too. So no, I'm just kidding. Yeah, Halloween rules. So nothing more to say. So my next feature is going to be number 9 on my list. Let me see about. It's another VHS. This one's kind of. Oh, okay. Now I see. All right. I don't remember it being like this, but it is 1986's Critters. Of course, I've done a video on the new streaming on Shudder that was absolutely banging. I absolutely loved it. But Critters has always been a cheesy, creepy creature, fun, mildly gore fest, if you will. I love Critters. Yeah, it's always been a favorite movie of mine in all its cheesy gloriness. 1986 Critters. Stephen Herrick directed it. It got a 6.0 out of 10 on IMDb. You take the old side here. Woo! You slip that off, and then the VHS comes out. I don't remember it being like that. This is from Showtime Video in Grand Haven, Michigan. Now, my last but not least, of course, feature on my top 10 that have created the horror ghoul that you see today is going to be 1982's John Carpenter's The Thing. Now, I can't really... Okay, so I'm making sure that this can be seen. This is my CED. Now, I did a post on this yesterday. If you don't know what a CED is, it's a capacitance electronic disc system. It got an 8.1 out of 10 out of IMDb. I have said before, and I'll say it again, The Thing is probably one of the closer efforts to a perfect horror movie of all time. Halloween is another. So John Carpenter just absolutely kills it with me. This is the back art. You know, you've got old boy on fire there. You've got Kurt Russell looking ever so concerned. But very cool. This was RCA's, competition to the Laserdisc and ultimately did not win. But The Thing, definitely, as I've said before, I love monster movies, and so The Thing, just mixed with the terror, mixed with the kind of who done it, who is it, with the practical effects, just with some of the more disgusting things that's in the movie, has always been a favorite of mine, along with many others, because I know that movie is just hugely popular, and there's a reason for that, because it is so good. There's other people that kind of like, oh, that's way too popular for me, or oh, that's way too mainstream, dude. Like, all right, well, it's popular because it rules. So if you want to think anything else, go ahead, but just go ahead and unsubscribe and kick it. I'm just trying to have a good time. You guys are just trying to have a good time. Without further ado, that was my top 10 movies that have created the horror ghoul that you see today. Without further ado, give me a ding, give me a dong, give me a bing, give me a bong, give me a like, give me a share. If you don't, I do not care. At the end of the day, I just want to share some of these beautiful terror scares. You know what I'm saying? These were the movies that created my love for horror and helped move along my love for horror up until my 30s. I'm going to tag a couple of people on Instagram. My Instagram is the Lo-Fi Horror Guy with underscores under every word. I'm going to tag a couple of people on Instagram and see what they are. A couple of guys in particular, I see, their collections. I see some of the things that they post about, and I would like to see what drives them to enjoy horror still to this day. So, leave a comment, send me a message. Let me know what you think about the video. If you have any sort of ideas for inspiration for new videos, go to my Instagram, shoot me a message. And without further ado, I'm going to slap you with the old 3, 2, 1. Nice.